Welcome back to the FTN NFL Team Preview Series, sponsored by Boom Fantasy. They have the top choice for daily fantasy sports action as the most innovative games for the casual hardcore fan. You can win up to 500 times that entry only at Boom Fantasy. Download to the App Store, Google Play. Use that promo code FTN to get a no-sweat bonus up to $100. Today, folks, we have a real treat. We have J.C. Allen on X at J.C. Allen NFL. He's a Bucs reporter and writer for SINow and Bucs Game Day. The preseason is over. We're ready for NFL season. And if I want to know about Tampa Bay, I go to J.C. Allen. Make sure you follow him, folks. And we have him in. We're going to start right away, J.C. Talk to me about the running backs. Rachaad White, you have a challenge from Bucky Irving. What did you see? What are your takeaways in the backfield here for Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I think it all starts up front, right? There was a big problem with the Bucs running game the last 2 years, finishing dead last in the league, and they went ahead and they upgraded that center position with Graham Barton, and then they brought in Ben Bredesen to upgrade some of these other positions on the offensive line. The development, right? Tristan Wirfs heading into his second year at left tackle, Luke Gedeke into his second year back at right tackle, and Cody Malkin his second year at right guard. All of that is going to lead to increased push and movement in the run game. Watching the preseason, we saw these guys, execute the scheme pretty flawlessly, just a vanilla play calling too, getting vertical and opening cutback lanes for the running backs, and that's where they're going to take care of it. Rachaad White finished as one of the best fantasy backs last season, one of the best running backs, especially as a receiver in the NFL, right behind Christian McCaffrey towards the end of the season last year. And I think this year is the reason for optimism is because they're learning a whole new scheme last year. This year, it's a similar scheme with different things and terminology added to it, but it's a similar scheme, so the comfortability levels there with the offensive line. And when you have that, you have room and holes for running backs to work with. And I think Rachaad White is going to eclipse 1,000 yards this year. I think he'll probably go over that. Again, I think he's going to be a weapon in the backfield, somewhere around 500 yards, probably around 12 touchdowns total between the both, if not more. That's kind of lowballing it there. 50 receptions again. I think he's a great fantasy play. And then, Bucky Irving, you brought him up as well. He was brought in to kind of take some of that load off of Rachaad because he started every game and was that, there was really no one behind him. Chase Edmonds got hurt and Sean Tucker wasn't doing anything. So Bucky was brought in, and what you saw in college tape is what you're seeing in the NFL. He's making the first guy miss regularly with routine, but it is Rachaad White's backfield this year at the very least. And I think Bucky will get his opportunities and his chances, but I would take him as a strong handcuff late in the draft. I wouldn't expect to have really much production out of him as a viable starter, even as a viable flex play. But you're probably talking about with him 450 rushing yards maybe this year, probably somewhere around 300 yards receiving, maybe 5 touchdowns combined between both of those, probably like 30 receptions, something like that. So this is a year to buy on Rachaad. His ADP is extremely low for what I think he's going to be doing. You can grab him in the 4th round in some drafts. I think he's going to produce at a 3rd round, late 2nd round value. I would scoop Rachaad up and grab Bucky as a nice handcuff because so far what we've seen is what we saw him do in college, and it's been impressive if he does get the opportunity to get a larger workload.
That is some of the most detailed fantasy advice we've ever had. JC, you are off and running. Let's get to the passing game. If the offensive line is better, more time to throw for Baker Mayfield. Look, Mike Evans is there going after Jerry Rice's record for most 1,000-yard receiving seasons in a row. We heard about Chris Godwin moving to the slot, and I believe per snaps, what we've seen, that is going to play out. But the player I'm most interested in, Jalen McMillan, the rookie who seems to have locked up that wide receiver 3 position, dynamic, explosive, big catch radius, could really boost this passing attack. Let's just look at the wide receivers here, how you project them moving forward.
Yeah, when you get J.C. Allen, you don't just get a Bucs guy, you get a league champion here. So I know what I'm talking about.
I love it. I love it.
Fantasy very seriously. So with Mike Steady Eddie, right, he's probably getting him in the 3rd round somewhere right now. I think that's probably, good range for him with some of the other receivers that are coming off the board, because you're going to get consistency with Mike. He's going to get his 1,000 yards. He's going to get around 80 receptions. He's going to probably get, anywhere from 10 to 14 touchdowns, led the league last year, tied for it at least. And you go back in the last couple of years, it's been consistently 10 plus touchdowns. You're going to have your down weeks with Mike when someone else is big. So just expect for that. But he's going to be a consistent fantasy production throughout the season. He's a guy who is under the radar still in his career, under the radar in fantasy, but he can help you win championships. And that's not, taking anything lightly there. Godwin is a guy who I think is getting really underdrafted. And I think people had the last kind of 2 seasons in their brain, coming back from that torn ACL. And then last year, moving him out into the outside position where he's all right there, but he thrives in the slot. And new offensive coordinator Liam Cohen mentioned his role to media as somewhat as a Cooper Kupp type role in this offense. So if that doesn't get you excited, just look at what he's done.
Right.
All right. Look at what he's done production wise out of the slot when he was back there, 2019, 2020, 2021 before he got injured. I mean, he's gonna get 1,000 yards. He's consistent there for the last 4 years. Going to get 1,000 yards for you, and I think his reception total will be closer to 100, if not over that this year. Problem with Godwin, if you look at his numbers the last few years, he's not a touchdown producer, and that's what scares a lot of fantasy owners if they're especially in a half PPR or just a standard league. Okay, he's going to get the yards, but he's not going to score, and I need a guy who can score and get the points on the board. Luckily, that's a pain point that the Bucs have looked at, targeted, and have made sure they've gotten a lot more work with him in the red zone. He's caught several red zone touchdowns so far throughout camp at practice, and I think you'll see his touchdowns go up. I'm not saying they're going to go up crazy, but going from, I think he only had one yet last year, and it was like on an end around, it wasn't receiving. I think his touchdowns should probably land somewhere in that 6 to 7 range this season. So again, not elite touchdown production, but he's going to give you elite receptions and yardage, and be a consistent player for you each and every week. You asked about Jalen McMillan. Very high on this guy.
Yeah,
I think he's going to have a phenomenal NFL career. I think he's going to be a real problem in fantasy, just not this year. I think if you're looking for, if you're in a deep league, 14-team league, snatch him up because he's going to give you solid production. But I don't think it's going to be as consistent as people would like it to be effective in season-long fantasy. Daily fantasy, I think there's a little bit more upside for him there. But McMillan, I have him probably around, somewhere hovering around 50, 50 plus receptions, 500 yards, maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns, somewhere around there. If he does more than that, I'll be surprised just because of the volume that, Mike, Chris, Rachaad are going to get, out of the backfield. And, but I think that's a perfect spot for number 3 wide receiver as a rookie. I do see him able to eclipse that. I don't see him getting past that 700 mark. Or getting past that like 70 receptions. I don't see 10 touchdowns. But if you're looking for a solid guy who's going to give you the kind of 5,505, I think that's right in line of what he's going to produce for you this season. Probably a more interesting play in daily, but it's certainly a great handcuff to have, especially if anything happens to Godwin. He's going to slot right into that slot role, and he'll be very productive there. So, again, one of these kind of handcuff plays, deeper league plays, daily fantasy plays, but not someone who's going to kind of win you a championship, at least not this year.
It's an excellent call for DFS. Already targeting him, like you said. What I love is you can stash him. If you have a deep bench, keep him there. Or what I like to do here, JC, is I like to grab players sometimes before the weekend starts at one spot in case there's an injury, because then McMillan's going to explode. Let's just turn to tight end here. Cade Otton, somebody I'm grabbing very late in drafts simply because he was number 1 per FTN Fantasy here, our Stats Hub, in route participation among tight ends. Unless you tell me differently, he's not going to have much competition. He's the main tight end focus there, who I know there's going to be more challenges for targets, but he's going so late. I still think he's a great value.
Yeah, he's going late, and he's the number 1 guy. Last year, he played 98% of the snaps. They're going to try to cut that down with a guy like Payne Durham, Devin Culp, who they drafted in the 7th round. But, I think he's on the cusp. I think he's on the cusp of being one of these guys, and maybe not necessarily a huge fantasy guy. But as far as like a tight end in the league, I think he's right on the cusp of entering that top 15 conversation. Again, deeper leagues, look for him. I think this is, again, similar production to McMillan. I think between them, they get over 1,000 yards, over 100 receptions, over 10 touchdowns. I'm looking at 50 plus receptions, 500 plus catches, 5 touchdowns out of Otton. I think this is a year he kind of takes a bigger break. He's kind of fell short of those numbers the last couple of seasons, but I think this is where he takes that climb. If you're a backup tight end guy, you like to have a backup tight end on your roster, I don't think you can do worse than Cade Otton. There's going to be games where he's kind of, not the focal point, but he's going to be a main part of that of that puzzle, especially when you kind of look at, okay, how do these guys do against safety? Cohen's very smart. If there's a team that's letting up a bunch of yards to safeties, a bunch of things, he's not going to ignore it. And he's going to make, K-Dot and a pivotal part of that game plan. So he's a game plan guy. I think he's a good backup guy to have. I don't think he enters the conversation of like starting tier unless you're in a deep league. But he is someone that, I think is, again, kind of an injury away of becoming a major part of this offense, and could really kind of do damage. But I don't quite think he's there yet. But tight end is such a volatile position, not just in the NFL and in fantasy. I mean, you got guys, there's a handful of guys. Then after that, the rest is pick your poison. But if you're looking at Noah Fant, if you're looking at some of these guys, K-Dot is right in that conversation with like the Noah Fant and some of these other guys, the kids out in Oakland, he's right in that same level of conversation you should be looking at.
Yep, Mayer, Tyler Conklin, Jawan Johnson,
he's
Kobe
going
Clark.
under the radar right there, and I think he's got higher upside in this offense than any of those other guys.
JC, I have to tell you, that was the best interview in terms of being able to marry what you see as a reporter and the fantasy world. We have to have you back. Folks, please follow JC on X at JC.
No defense?
NFL. No defense. You can give us defense.
No kicker? No,
you were so good with the offense. I don't think I even need to ask about defense.
If you're in an IDP league, it goes without saying Antoine Winfield Jr. is a guy you should target. On the defensive line, Vita Vea has slimmed down significantly. He's going to be a problem. So if you're looking at defensive line guys, sack numbers wise, he's going to be up there. Probably over 6 sacks this season. Kalijah Kancey, I could imagine 6 sacks as well. Yaya Diaby is a hot name for a reason. Look at him in this draft. Levante David is steady as always. Pick him up. And then Zion McCollum is a kind of under the radar guy you can get late in the free agency thing. I think he's going to have a really strong season and really kind of surprise people. A lot of people are looking at the Bucs secondary. It's like, I don't know about this guy. Who's that? Has some of the best testing of a cornerback at the combine of all time. Extremely fast, lengthy, smart. Last year he got thrown into a bunch of different systems, playing it at nickel cornerback, safety. He understands the game, and now he can utilize. He told me this. He can utilize his 4.33 speed in order to break on balls instead of using it as, trying to get out of trouble. He can use it to make plays. So he's a guy. And the defense as a whole, I think, probably finishes around 50 sacks. I think the turnovers go up when you bring a guy like Jordan Whitehead as Zion McCollum, the pressure that they're going to be getting. So I think it's a good, solid defense that you can set, forget, and leave it alone. It's not one of these things. And it's going, again, its IDP is underranked. It was one of the better defenses last year. I think it's going to be another one of the better defenses this year. And Chase McLaughlin just made every single one of his kicks except for one. He's going to hit the ones beyond 50. He's going to hit the gimme shots. He had a struggle in the preseason. He bounced himself back with a 51-yarder. If you're looking for a kicker and the big names are gone, Aubrey, Tucker, all that stuff, then Chase McLaughlin is staring at you right there. Don't be afraid to pick him up because he's going to be a consistent kicker who can hit from the long distance and also kick the short ones too and won't miss a PAT for you.
That is the best team preview series interview we've ever had. IDP, I'll tell our guy Liam McNeely. Kicker, you covered it all. On X at JC Allen NFL, writer for SINow and for Bucs Game Day. JC, that was a pleasure. Great insight. I'm doing my home league draft tonight, and I am taking with me some of this information. Great job. Thanks so much. Can't wait to have you back on.
Absolutely. Whenever you want me, I'm here.
The NFL Team Preview Series is sponsored by Boom Fantasy, your top choice for daily fantasy sports action. Boom Fantasy has the most innovative games that cater to both casual and hardcore fans. Win up to 500 times your entry only at Boom Fantasy. Download now on the App Store and Google Play. Use promo code FTN to get a no-sweat bonus up to $100.